Hey, my name's ShawNshawN. I do art on ShawNshawN.co and specials on eBay. Today we're going to review Star Wars, The Rise of Skywalker. So I'm just going to say there's spoilers in here, so just ignore this review if you want a spoiler-free review. It's directed by J.J. Abrams, who directed Episode 7, then it was Rian Johnson, then he's back again for this. Time is 2 hours 21 minutes, so quite a long bit of story, but because of all the editing and the really fast sequencing, it really doesn't feel like 2 hours. You're going to know because you're going to have to pee, so don't drink anything going into this. You have Carrie Fisher, obviously is General Leia, Mark Hamill, Luke Skywalker Ghost, Chewbacca is Jonas Sumatomo, obviously the original actor of Chewbacca was too old to play it. Adam Driver is Kylo Ren, Daisy Ridley is Rey, John Boyega is Finn, Oscar Isaac as Poe, Anthony Daniels C-3PO, and a whole bunch of other characters, right, from all the different series. So the movie kind of kicks off with Kylo Ren. He's looking for this weird tech that's a triangle, and he puts the triangle on a ship, and then he takes his journey, ends up on the planet of the Sith, which no one's ever seen in any of the episodes, so that's really kind of a cool idea. Then he finds out Emperor Palpatine is resurrected, and he promised him this huge fleet if he just does as he will. So he's going to sign up. And then on the other side, on the good side, they heard about a little bit about that there might be a Sith planet, and they're kind of tracking down clues to get there, and then they finally get there, and then there's a big showdown. So this is kind of the crux of the story. And now we'll go into all the spoiler parts, so ignore it. It has the flaws of all of the Disney versions of Star Wars in the sense that there's always these unbelievable twists and turns. You want to have twists and turns, but they just don't make any sense. They come out of blind eye. They don't make any sense from the Star Wars logic, from the characters' logic, from the story arc logic. It's just like, oh, let's throw up something crazy. So they've kind of continued this logic, and it's wearing really thin, I would say, in this story. So another thing that they have is you see J.J. Abrams trying to bring back what was supposed to be in the last episode, episode 9. And this is our episode 10, and this is episode 11, or whatever it is. I don't know. Or episode 9, this is. I should get that right. So in episode 8, Rian Johnson took it over. He threw out the complete plot of J.J. Abrams. And so now, since J.J. Abrams is in this last one, he's kind of brought back the parts that were supposed to be in the film before this, so it makes sense from his trilogy, and then it's just a freaking complete mess, right? It's a complete shit show due to Disney kind of farming that out and then not having a whole trilogy written the way Lucas would have done it. They try to shoot it too fast. That's very obvious. The only thing good about it shooting fast is the characters don't age, so you really see, the characters more or less very consistent with each other. So I think that sense of people understanding what the actor is supposed to be, because it's only like a year away, you're not going to forget much, you don't have to revisit much. So in that aspect it's good, but from the editing standpoint, from really working on a really good story, it's showing all the weaknesses through that. So some of the twists and turns, these are all spoilers, so don't watch this. Kylo kisses Rey, and you're like, why? There's no build up to this, kind of. They're obviously adversaries, and in the end they kind of kiss, and you're like, what? And then it's just kind of crazy. You have some issues with C-3PO, which I'll go over later, that don't make any sense. Kylo Ren, in the beginning, he's going all these random adventures by himself, and he's like, dude, you're the commander of the fleet. You wouldn't just go out by yourself. You'd be sending people out, and they would be sending you messages back. Like the way Darth Vader's played, he's always with his troops. He's always going into the last decisive moment. And so that's what Kylo Ren should be doing. And he's not. And he's just like, oh, I'm going to go off my own adventure. You guys run the battle station. Like, that doesn't make any goddamn sense, right? So that whole logic's really stupid. There's this other general that's come up that's kind of a look-alike to one of the original episode 4 generals. So there's kind of a copycat there. He's pushed the guy number 2 that was originally kind of going to take over, except that Kylo Ren stopped him. Now he's down to number 3 slot. So this guy's not too happy. Later in the story, he turns out to be a spy, but there's no build up to this. So, it's just totally stupid. The origin of Snoke is kind of handled, but not really. So it's like, that's really dissatisfying, because there was a huge buildup of Snoke, and then just like, we killed him off, and we don't know where he came from or anything. And you're like, you got to show that, like, that doesn't make any sense. You have this weird flashback where Rey at some point had to face off herself in a cave, similar to the way Luke Skywalker did in Empire. I think this was probably what was going to be in the movie before this, which was cut out due to Rian Johnson taking over the project. And so that was a complete F up. So he's kind of added that back in. So he's kind of covered up. I mean, you should basically just not watch the last movie and just go from 7 to 9, right? And skip 8 for this to make sense. And I think it just goes down to, really a lack of Lucas kind of being behind the scenes to oversee the story, make sure it makes sense. That should have been what they did. And Disney just said, oh, we're taking the reins, screw you, after they bought the project. And that was just a huge just a huge F up, I would say. You know, he hasn't been able to keep the culture the same. And, you know, he could have just seen it from a really high level executive and been a consultant on the project. And I don't think he was. And it just shows so badly through this project. You have other things where, so let's go through the good parts of the movie. So the good parts of the movies, you find out the origin stories of Rey. So I really like that because you don't know for the first two. And then now it's kind of revealed. And then you have, you know, you keep thinking it was Skywalker and it actually turns out to be a different route. So it's a really cool aspect of how her origin story and why her parents abandoned her. So that kind of all comes together, and that's the really good part of this story, I would say. They did briefly cover kind of Leia's training as a Jedi, which probably should have been in the last episode. It would have made that whole episode made sense, but they cut it or didn't film it, which was totally stupid when she flew through space. Because if she had been trained, then you'd be like, oh, she can Jedi Force float through space. That makes sense. But if she just all of a sudden is, I'm a Jedi now, with no training, it's just really stupid. You have kind of also Leia training Rey is kind of her continual thing. The same thing as how Luke Skywalker took a long time to be Jedi trained, which kind of is more consistent with the original 4, 5, 6. Not really consistent with the 1, 2, 3, where it took like a generation for Anakin to be good and well trained. You know, he took him his whole life to be a Jedi. So that kind of goes back, and they, you know, maybe realized they screwed up in the frickin' 7 where she could just immediately use the Force, which was totally dumb. She is more powerful than Luke Skywalker, I would say, so that does make sense in a way. Another good thing is they have the foreign languages come up, so you have different creatures come out and they're speaking foreign language. They don't translate it at all. You don't even know what's being said, so that gives it a real nice Star Wars flavor, similar to when they worked in the bar scene. So they have kind of another bar scene where they have that happen. Another thing they do is they have a lot of just character bloat, I would say, in the sense like there's characters in there, but they don't have any points, so like why are they even in the plot? Like you have the bartender, I think was from episode 7, who was really key in that story, and then she's just here and she's an advisor or something, but there's no character arc, there's no point to be in there. It's like, why is she even here if there's no point to her? You know, the Asian girl, she had kind of a point where she stopped Finn in one of the stories, and then now it's like she's just a side character, nothing to do with anything. So it's like her role just is completely pointless and overlooked, which doesn't make any sense because she was kind of a key person in the last 2 films. Yeah, there's obviously Finn hasn't changed at all. He's kind of the same through the film. Poe is basically the same. There's no character tension between the good guys, which they had in the 4, 5, 6. Obviously there was Leia, Han, and Luke. They're always kind of fighting back and forth, who loved who was partnered up with who, and that was kind of a really nice character arc through the story. And here we just see like there was development in 7, 8, but now it's just kind of flatlined through this, so it's like that's kind of really lame in a way. You don't have Poe. He has to learn that he's a general. They just magically become a general. Same with Finn becoming a general as well. Like it's just, oh, well, Leia's dead, so now we need generals. You're like, just another stupid twist. It doesn't make any sense. But then they go fight in the battles. You're like, if you're in general, you're going to fight in the battles. You'd still be like a captain or a lieutenant or something. So that doesn't make any sense. Another really bad thing is they had to deal with the issue of Carrie Fisher. She died before they even really started this project. So they just had snippets left from the other film they hadn't used. And they're like, oh, we'll just use those snippets and then somehow fit it in there, which they do kind of pretty good with. They do pretty good with the voiceover. It looks like she's talking, and the part she says or the part she, you know, the voiceover is pretty good, I would say. However, the parts that they use, it just don't really add much to the character. It is not like a bold, decisive leader. You know, if she was Carrie Fisher was such a bold, decisive character. When she gets old, she should be really battle hardened. And you didn't get that from the last film too much, and this film either. And it's just like, how could she be the general? And she's just kind of this whoop ass. Like if you see the general that, you know, works under Trump, for example, not to bring that in, but he's just a hard ass, you know, and it's just like, you need a hard ass guy to be the general. And she does not read like a general the way she's portrayed. They should have used what I think is use the technology from Avatar. It already exists. Have someone play out Princess Leia for the part you need, and CGI her face on there. It would look weird, but at least it would make sense. And then you could have the character die whenever, but at least it makes sense. It doesn't make any sense there. What else? Okay, the Force has changed, so now even Finn feels the Force, and you're like, it's fine if you believe in the Force, but then you feel it and you're like a stormtrooper. That doesn't make any goddamn sense. You know, I have Rey training under Leia, which is good. That kind of shows the Jedi training still, so that's more consistent with the way it should have been shot. Versus in the first episode, she just oddly suddenly had the Force powers, and it was just ridiculous. The weird thing too is the Force powers, the Emperor has more power dead than alive. You're like, oh, this doesn't make any sense. They just took his magical lightning fingers, and now he can shoot down ships. Like, what the fuck is that, dude? Just so ridiculous. And now you can actually magically conjure up whole battle destroyers, like with no tech. You're like, now you just transition the film from a Force having this kind of specific person-to-person or person-to-object thing, and now you've transferred it to like, oh, you can just make up items out of your ass like it's freaking Lord of the Rings or some shit. It's like, what the fuck? Like, it's a Harry Potter version of the Force now. And in the end, you have all the voices from all the Star Wars come back to Rey's head as like these ghosts, but now they're in her head and they talk to her. And just the, you know, the character flip of Kylo Ren is a really good idea, but they just don't kind of film it right, so it doesn't have that transition like, oh, he's going from the bad to the good now again. You kind of have that, but you don't really have that. I don't know. They didn't really work it out or film it right. I think because since Princess Leia died, they didn't really have an option to shoot those scenes right. And I don't know. Tech-wise, they have some really stupid shit here, too. They have Star Destroyers. Now they have the power of a Death Star. It's like, okay, so in literally like 50 years, they go from like, it goes to a Death Star to a Death Planet, which is fine. That's just a different way of doing it. The planet's actually probably more realistic way to build the Death Star. And then you go from there to just a destroyer can just freaking have a cannon, and then, oh, it's the freaking Death Star. You're like... That doesn't make any sense, dude. The other stupid thing about that, you actually have the Death Stars supposedly landed on a planet, and they find this special key in the Death Star, and you're like... Dude, episode before, they blow it up in space. You're like, oh, this is so painful. Like, how are you rewriting the history that way? This shit would be floating in space if there was any part left over. It wouldn't be in some damn planet. I mean, it would have burned up in the atmosphere because it would have just been little pieces burned. I mean, everyone knows this kind of logic. Like, this just doesn't make any sense. So now they have, the stormtroopers have jetpacks. It's like, why would they have jetpacks? I mean, you had it with Boba Fett, so I guess that makes sense. So that's not too much of a leap, I guess. But then they're riding motorbikes, and you're like, they could levitate since episode 4. Why the hell would you go back in technology? It doesn't make any sense. Like, oh yeah, we're gonna race this Lamborghini with a horse and buggy with 1,000 horses. Like, no, you wouldn't. Like, it doesn't make any sense. So that's kind of dumb. CGI screwed up. It's just mostly just the Leia, the way they filmed Leia. Kind of talked about that before. It should have just been shot and then done Avatar version and, you know, show someone else doing it so it actually made sense. They did do some training of Leia training Rey, so that was cool, but that should have been probably in the last episode. It made a lot more sense. So again, a fuck up between Rian Johnson and J.J. Abrams. You know, thank God to Disney. Chewbacca's eye color's off since you have the different actor playing, but you just need to put lens in. Everyone knows you have brown eyes. Like, I don't know how this slipped through. They could have CGI'd it if they had forgotten to give him context. So really not that hard. A minor editing thing. I think they just kind of whipped this through in the editing and just, they didn't have the right scenes cut together. Or they just know how to throw it together somehow. You have this mysterious knife, which is the clue to get to the Sith planet. And then you get to the Sith planet and then, oh, we forgot about the knife. Who cares? Like, dude, it has to go all the way through. Like, it has to unlock a door or something. And you're like, oh, this mystery reveal. Like, why do you need the knife then? Like, this doesn't make any sense. The other thing is, the big flaw is C-3PO. So in the first half of the film, it's just the normal C-3PO. And then he's rebooted. And then he becomes the old C-3PO, basically before any programming. So in the first half, or maybe it was in Acts 1 and 2, he's C-3PO, but the jokes aren't landing. It just doesn't sound like C-3PO. It's like everyone knows what C-3PO is, and the humor and kind of the melodramatic kind of drama queen that he is. At the same time, he dramatizes stuff, right? He's just a drama queen. And he's not that person. It's just like the jokes don't land at all. Then they reboot him, and then he sounds like the old C-3PO, but they're actually just using the old lines that C-3PO said before. So obviously the original actor is able to really duplicate that, and it sounds like C-3PO. But it's like, it's just so bad because you're just like, man, the first part of the film should have had C-3PO sounding good. Why did they write the lines so badly and then just reuse old lines that sound way better? It's like the Disney reuse of material over and over again. And then the other part is C-3PO doesn't want to translate some Sith text, and he's like, due to my Empire program, he's like, you were programmed by Anakin Skywalker, dude, and that guy turned out to be the freaking Darth Vader. What the fuck are you talking about? He wouldn't have any like language limitation. I mean, you could have, but why would the Empire reduce that you couldn't translate Sith? They wouldn't give a crap. You know, they didn't even believe in the Sith, except that they're ruled by the Sith from the top, but it was kind of like this mystery element. So that's kind of dumb. And then R2-D2 just happens to have a backup of C-3PO's all his memories. You're like, really? Okay, and that's all R2-D2 serves as. You obviously have his replacement, which is the round disc. He's mostly in the film, and R2-D2 really isn't. The original R2-D2 is obviously gone, the guy that played it. So, although it's not too hard to play that because you're just really turning a top and everything, and all the special effects on top. So, and that's not much of a miss. The music is screwed up too. So the music. So in the original first 6, episodes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, every element in there has its own music. The Death Star has its own music. Han Solo has its own music. Princess Leia has its own music. Luke Skywalker has his own music. The planet has its own music. Here, it's like they just throw it out the window. You get to the Death Star, like the remains of the Death Star, there's no Death Star music. You're like, dude, it's supposed to be the Death Star. You know, you get to the Sith planet, maybe there's music there. I don't know. The other thing besides that musical, the sound audio that's not tied to the elements is sometimes the sound versus the music, like the sound effects versus the music, the audio's out, like they're just like not high enough. Like they had a disagreement about the editing. It just doesn't work right. It's just too quiet in some areas. Like you expect the sound effects to be louder than they are, and they just aren't. I mean, it might have been because I'm watching this old cinema, so maybe just the sound quality wasn't great there. So maybe that was it. So you can compare with other critics. Yeah, I mean, just overall, I knew it was going to be more and more disappointing as Disney takes it over, but the accumulation of errors that they've made in the other movies have just kind of compiled together to make kind of a soup of a mess that J.J. Abrams really just can't fix. I think, technically it's kind of cool, and if you see it without the other baggage, it kind of stands alone. You're like, oh, this is kind of interesting. But if you have all this baggage and it doesn't make sense, and they just throw out the old logic of the old films, and you have these radical plot twists that don't make any goddamn sense, it's just painful. And you just wish Disney had never had bought Lucas's rights. Obviously Lucas is probably too old to film this now. He's in his 80s, so, and I know he's tired of it. He's done so many projects with Star Wars, so I get it, he's done with it. But this is just, it's exactly what my boss and I had predicted back like 4 years ago when they bought it. We're like, they're just gonna beat this horse to death. And you're really getting the sense of like they're just reusing every particular plot twist that came from 4, 5, and 6, and the few good elements of 1, 2, 3. They just cherry pick the hell out of that and just reuse it. Like, oh, we're gonna have a training with Skywalker. Oh, we'll have a training with Rey. Oh, Leia has mysterious force powers. Oh, Luke has mysterious force power. I don't know. It's just overbaked on top of overbaked. You have Han Solo pops up randomly haunting Kylo Ren. You're like, he's not a force figure. There's no way he comes back as a ghost, but he's not shown as a ghost. He's just shown as a memory. You're like, it's just so painful to watch. They did do a better version of Luke Skywalker coming back as a force ghost, so that was kind of cool, but they screwed it up when they gave it to the Rian Johnson. He just screwed up the whole plot between J.J. Abrams, and J.J. Abrams can't put it back together. It's like Humpty Dumpty trying to put it back together, but just so many issues with just weird plot twists that don't make any goddamn sense. Character development that doesn't make any goddamn sense, like Kylo Ren falling in love with Rey. You're like, what is this? It's like, this is so crap. Like, he's ruling the galaxy and he loves the power, and now he's throwing it out. Anyway, I don't know what to say about this film. I really don't. I wanted to like it. I had low expectations going in. All of my low expectations were fulfilled. It is kind of a technical film where you're going to see it coolest in a movie theater, but yeah, you got to overlook the plot and you got to overlook a lot of stuff. It does come together as an overall movie, but yeah, I don't know what kind of scenes they had to work with, but they probably should have reshot longer. I don't know, reshot the whole freaking last episode, who knows. Anyway, that's my recommendation. I don't know if I recommend the film. Probably like, I don't know. I hate to say not go see a Star Wars film, but I kind of feel like that. Anyway, if you want to subscribe, you can subscribe below. And I'll see you in the next movie review. Thanks for watching, guys.